Hi there, I'm Russell Sturgis, founder and principal of EAP Mentor. Welcome to part 2 in the series of blogs that I'm doing on the 8 principles of love. And as I've indicated in the previous blogs, this particular series has to do with the philosophical background to the Enhancers Awareness Program. And as I explained, that's very much associated with the series of 8 statements called the Beatitudes, which are found in the Sermon on the Mount in the New Testament. In the blog that we did last month, we looked at the first of these 8 statements, which was, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Little did we know what was going to unfold over the ensuing month. And so between then and now, the world has been severely exposed to the impact of coronavirus. And of course, what we've essentially created globally is a state of poor in spirit, brought about by the fact that many people are locked in their homes, and they're without employment. Financial resources are limited. In some cases, they've already dried up. Employment prospects, who knows where that's at. So everything that we valued as part of our reality, our experience, has literally been stripped away through this virus that has impacted the whole world. So we're in this place where the things that we valued are no longer there to continue to sustain the life that we were creating based on those things. And it would help to reinforce why the Cathar referred to this world as a world of illusion, because it's this whole idea that this world that we live in, these things are illusionary. They were here one minute and gone the next, a little bit like a magic trick. And so here we have this situation where things that we took for granted as being something that was sustainable, something that was permanent, has proven to be unsustainable and impermanent in the sense that it's not here anymore, it's gone. And here we are left, for many people, in a place, I think, still of numbness in terms of what's actually gone on. And of course, numbness has moved to anger. And of course, what people are going through right now, and I talked about this in the last blog, is that people are now going through a process of grief where all of the steps associated with grief are starting to unfold as there's anger, as there's denial, as there's depression, etc., etc. And so what we have is this situation where the things that were essential to people's life have been removed. Now, the problem with this is that life as we knew it was habitual. And so our work and the fact that we turned up to work 5 days a week or whatever our work routine was habitual. And we sort of had this sense that this was sustainable and would be ongoing. Our social regime, the people we would catch up with and the things that we did socially, the clubs we belonged to, the sports that we played. I mean, it's just, who would have ever thought that all of the different codes of football would be shut down and it wouldn't be on TV and wouldn't be available. Yet so many of us identified who we were with these tribes, these sporting tribes, even our religions, our churches, the inability to be able to go to church and have social encounters at church. So all of these different things in terms of our work and social environment have all been shut down. And then we have things in terms of our other habits, which is our consumerism. the ability to go and spend money and to buy things. Once again, the shops have all been shut down. Our ability to move around and purchase these things have all been shut down. And so essentially our habitual life as we know it has been completely forcibly taken away from us. Now, if any of you have had anything to do with diet and weight loss, where you've been, because of disease or something that you've been forced to have to confront, you've been told that you've had to change your diet, and of course we go in kicking and screaming because we have these habits that we've established that we're being forced to change, and we make the commitment and we get involved in doing what we've got to do in order to allay our fear. But there's a point where that no longer becomes sustainable, and what happens is people fall off the wagon, and we end up being in this situation where people find themselves reverting to their old habits. And of course, I'm going to suggest to you that this is going to become an intrinsic part of what's going to be happening here, is that for all of us, we've been put in this situation, and who knows for how long, where we can't do the things that are habitual. And just because we've stopped doing it doesn't stop the habit, doesn't stop the impact. What we have is neural pathways that have been clearly defined and established in our brain that says this is how life works. And so as much as we're able to, out of fear, stop that for some time, there will be a point where that won't be sustainable. And in fact, ultimately what we're needing is to be able to find ways of reprogramming, if it is what we desire, those neural pathways or the habits that we have, inspired by making self-loving choices as opposed to being dictated to by fear. I would like to suggest to you that the mentors who are responsible for facilitating the Enhancers Awareness Program could be best described as experts in change management, and that really what the program is that they're delivering is this capacity to help people make sustainable change. And of course, one of the things that we have nothing to do with is step one, which is blessed are those who are poor in spirit. That's the consequence. And if you remember, I talked about the fact that it's the consequence of natural justice. It's a consequence of death and aging, and it's a consequence of misfortune. Well, I think all of those three things are a cocktail at the moment in terms of what people have been presented with and experiencing. And so what we have is this cocktail that's creating this state of a pandemic of being poor in spirit. And we have this handful of people who have the ability to help people through this particular change experience. And if you remember, I talked in the first unit, the first part of this, about the fact that this is a dark night of the soul experience. And I would suggest to you, if you're out there and you're feeling the overwhelm of being in this predicament, what you're feeling is the experience of the dark night of the soul. And at the moment, it's probably what we still call dark night of the senses. So basically what you're experiencing is the way in which the sensory inputs have been interrupted, and that becomes annoying, frustrating and perturbing because of this dark night of our senses. It's like they've been disturbed. But if this sustains, if this is something that becomes perpetuated, that dark night of the senses becomes a dark night of the soul. And then there's a much deeper need for creating sustainable change. It could be right now that you're saying, well, maybe I can hang on long enough to come out the other side. This won't be long enough. And of course, we see the government doing an amazing job at trying to hold up and hold people over. But once again, in terms of the amount of money that they can throw at this, it's not a bottomless pit. This is something that does have a limit. And at the end of the day, there may become a point where people are going to have to look at something different. And that's where this work comes in. So the second part in the Beatitudes, the second of the 8, is blessed are those that mourn, for they shall be comforted. And so here we have this whole idea that it'd be kind of nice that in amongst all of what's going on right now, that there would be somewhere where we could feel a sense of comfort in all of this. And it seems a little bit of a stretch too far. But the key here is in the principle of mourning. And in the blog, I describe what mourning really is and how it's different to grieving. Grieving is what happens when we're in a state of being poor in spirit, when we've lost those things that habitually have been a part of our routine. Mourning is the point at which we're able to give voice to our grief. Instead of it just being an internal process, we're now in a position where it's having an external expression, whether that be through tears or anger or frustration or whatever it is, journaling, being able to communicate and talk about it with other people, but where we're able to talk about what's happening inside of us and to bring it out so that it has this ability to be expressed externally. In that place, we can step back and be the witness of that external expression. Now, the external expression is mourning, but mourning's more than that external expression. It's about the ability to step back and to be the observer of the external expression. And that's where the comfort comes in, because in the place of that which witnesses, or the place of that which observes, there actually isn't taking thought and giving it meaning, or being able to identify feelings and once again have those things have meaning and expression. You have those things. It's not denying that the pain exists and that the suffering exists, but it's about being able to step back and observe the suffering and the pain, and to be able to just be in the place of recognizing that that has come as a consequence of the habits that you've established throughout your life experience. So part of what we do in our program is really explore that. And this is the component of developing awareness. So the first part of it we talked about, where you go through and basically self-assess your state of awareness, and this part of it now in the mourning phase is giving clarity to how aware am I really about who I am physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And so we actually have you go through and with every single component of these 60 statements that define who we are in these four aspects, every one of these 60 elements, we get to really identify what the truth is of who we are in these things. And until we do this, until we can see where we're really at, then it's really difficult to create a new neural pathway. Really what we're doing here is becoming really clear of what the pathway is and what the impact of that pathway is. And of course, the heightened understanding of the impact of that is seen in the suffering that we experience at these times of being poor in spirit, or when we're going through loss and grief. So what we're doing at this particular point is becoming more aware of what our truth is, more aware of what our reality is. And so as we're able to step back and be the witness of our life journey, and we're able to sort of get context to it, there is a certain comfort with that. It's kind of interesting to have worked with many people, hundreds of people over the last decade, in taking them through this process. And it's really interesting to watch, even through this phase where people are able to step back and be the witness, to watch the shift in terms of what's going on, because at the same time that you're going through this process of observing what has been your truth and where you've been, at the same time you begin to see how ludicrous and how not serving some of these things have been, which means that now you're in a position to start to go, oh, heck, hang on a second, maybe I could have this be different. Maybe instead of doing what I've always done, by becoming really familiar with this, there's a possibility that I could do it differently. And in that moment, you have hope. And that's where the comfort comes from, is in that moment where there's hope that this could be different, and that becomes an intrinsic part of the mourning experience. Until you get to that place of being able to externally express the grief and to be able to be the witness of it, while it still continues to be internalized grief and something that still sits strongly within you, there's no opportunity for it to be witnessed from that external place. And from that place, there's no capacity for hope to be developed. So what we have then in the next phase of our program is beginning to explore the hope of what an alternative reality could possibly look like. Now, when you're in grief, you can't do that. That's impossible because you're still caught up in habit. Now, as we take you through to this place of being able to witness the way in which it hasn't been serving, and the fact that you can bring adult rationale to the whole idea that there could be another more serving reality, we explore that with you, and we start to build the hope of what an alternative, more self-loving and kind reality might look like. And in that place is comfort. In that place, all of a sudden, you're no longer just caught up with the suffering of the experience that's tied up with the habits and the world of illusion that you've been completely caught up in previously. Please go on and take a moment to have a read of the written blog. This is really quite timely in terms of what we're doing right now as we take you through this process of understanding how this can be different. Change management is what the Enhances Awareness program is all about. And really what we're doing here is helping you make changes around values, from material values that obviously are illusionary because many of you have experienced the impact of that, to beginning to understand that there are more sustainable values, which I loosely refer to as spiritual values. And that's what the Beatitude is all about, is explaining what those spiritual values are. But they give a very clear way of identifying what it requires in order to be able to make changes to the neural pathways so that the new habits that are aligned with these new values can be achieved and can be integrated into your consciousness and into your experience as a human. If you'd like to know more about the Enhances Awareness program, go to our webpage, eapmentor.com. We have a wonderful Facebook page, which if you go into facebook.com/Enhances Awareness program, you'll be able to find us. And we have a monthly newsletter that you can subscribe to called Mindful Living, which you can find on our webpage. And that's free, and it's a wonderful monthly update on awareness and mindfulness, and we'll give you some ideas about what it is that you could do to help make your journey through this experience of humanity much more peace-filled, love-filled, and a life that has kindness to yourself, to others, and to the planet as your basic modus operandi. Anyway, thank you for watching the video, and enjoy the blog, and I'll speak to you again soon. See you then. Bye.